Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dave and in today's video we'll talk about the Shaddoll Invoked deck. This is one of the most powerful decks in the format, and in this video I will try to tell you some ruling and tips which you can use when playing against or with this deck. I have already seen a lot of players making misplays or mistakes with this deck simply because they are not familiar with the cards and with the card text. So without further ado, let's begin. First, the basics of the deck. Shaddoll Invoked is a fusion based deck which can summon out really powerful fusion monsters, for example El Shaddoll Construct, which is really important for their combos, or El Shaddoll Winda, which is really dangerous because it doesn't let the player summon more than one monster with special summoning methods per turn. The Shaddoll monsters in the main deck have two abilities. First, if they are flipped face up, they will do something, and second, if they sent to the graveyard by a card effect, they will do another thing, and all the fusion cards send them to the graveyard as a card effect. So that means that only with one fusion card your opponent will be able to activate multiple effects. The Invoked engine can special summon powerful fusion monsters like Mehaba, which can negate your effects, or Kaliga, which only let you use one monster effect per turn. Let's see the first part, the rulings. Ruling number 1. Super Polymerization. Super Polymerization is a really powerful card, especially in this deck, because your opponent can use your own monsters to fusion summon their fusion monsters. So this card is not only powerful, but helps the deck a lot. Let's see the card text. Discard one card, fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from either field as fusion material. Neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. And the common misplay I have seen a lot of times that they summon a Shaddoll card, use Super Polymerization, send the Shaddoll card from their hand to the graveyard. After that, they fusion summon a Shaddoll monster using their Shaddoll on the field and your monster on your field. And after that, they activate the effect of the Shaddoll card. They send from their field to the graveyard, and the Shaddoll card they discarded from their hand. The problem here is that the card they discarded won't be able to activate the effect because it's true that it was sent to the graveyard, but Super Polymerization's discard a card is actually a cost, and the Shaddoll monsters only activate their effects if they are sent to the graveyard by a card effect and not a cost. The same happens when they use the effect of Invoked Mehaba. Mehaba has the ability that once per turn, when a spell, trap card or monster effect is activated, quick effect, you can send the same type of card from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation. In this case, if the effect was a monster effect and you send the monster, a Shaddoll monster, from your hand to the graveyard, the Shaddoll monster won't activate the effect because this is a cost. There is another monster in the deck with the discard effect, and this is Leicester, the Invoker of Madness, the Link monster. And in this case, when you discard the Shaddoll monster, the effect will activate because Aleister's discard part is actually an effect and not a cost, so that will activate the Shaddoll monsters. So don't be fooled. When your opponent playing Shaddoll Invoked and they discard the Shaddoll monster for the cost, they can never ever activate that Shaddoll card's effect. Ruling number 2. What happens if you hit a little girl and her cute puppet dragon with a really big rock? The answer is don't do that because you will go to jail. But on the other hand, if we are talking about Winda and Nibiru, actually nothing will happen because you cannot activate Nibiru. Because Winda says that you can only special summon monsters once per turn. And Nibiru special summon itself and special summon a token, which means 2 summons, so you cannot even activate Nibiru's effect. On the other hand, there is one specific case when you can activate it. If you activate Nibiru and your opponent doesn't have the Winda, but after you activated Nibiru, he activates, let's see, Shaddoll Fusion, and with that, he special summons Winda, then what happens? Nibiru activation will be Chainlink 1, and the special summon of Winda, so the effect of the Shaddoll Fusion, will be Chainlink 2. So first, the Chainlink 2 will resolve, so the Winda will be special summoned, and then your Nibiru will resolve. And because at the time of the activation of Nibiru, Winda wasn't on the field, you could activate the Nibiru, and this way it will tribute all monsters on the field, and after this Winda is not on the field, so it will special summon itself and the token too. So imagine it this way. If you throw the rock to the girl and to the dragon, that's illegal, you can't do that. But if you throw a rock to a random direction and suddenly the girl with the dragon appears, you cannot do anything, the rock will hit them. Okay. Ruling number 3. This is also about Winda, and this may sound a bit ridiculous, but it's really important. Winda's effect applies to both players. Yeah, this is not a joke. When your opponent summoned the Winda, for example before the 5th summon, and he's really happy because this way you cannot use Nibiru, and after this he starts to make the other parts of the combo and special summon 3 or 4 times, that won't work. That's illegal. Ruling number 4. Invocation. I asked a friend what's the effect of Invocation, and he said that, oh yes, Invocation is only a normal fusion card, but if you have a Leicester in your graveyard, then you can banish monsters from your graveyard and field. And actually, in this way, this is not true, because Invocation and the polymerization is different, because with the polymerization you can use monsters from your hand or field as fusion materials, but Invocation says that fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand as fusion materials. So Invocation is not the same as a polymerization because you cannot use monsters from your field as fusion materials. On the other hand, if you have a Leicester in the graveyard and you use monsters from the graveyard or from your field as fusion materials, don't forget that those monsters will be banished from the field and from the graveyard. These were the rulings which I wanted to tell you. These were the most common mistakes I have seen. And now let's see some tips. Tip number 1. Use your Nibiru as soon as possible. We talked about the Nibiru Winda ruling. And as you saw, if Winda is already on the field, you cannot activate Nibiru. So, immediately after the 5th summon, if you can use Nibiru, use it, because you can never know when they will summon out the Winda. Tip number 2. The Ash Blossom. There is a card, Shaddoll Fusion, which is really powerful in this deck because if you have a monster special summoned from the extra deck and your opponent uses Shaddoll Fusion, they will be able to special summon a fusion monster using materials for the fusion summon from their deck. But it also means, in response to the Shaddoll Fusion, you can use your Ash Blossom and completely shut down its effect. And here's the interesting part. Even if your opponent would like to use Shaddoll Fusion in the way that they will use fusion materials from their hand or field, of course, in this case, you can also use Ash Blossom to shut down the effect. Yes, it's true. You can use Ash Blossom on Shaddoll Fusion. Doesn't matter if your opponent will or won't actually use monsters from the deck. Tip number 3. Shut down the enemy's graveyard somehow. So, if you are the first player and you can manage to summon out an Abyss Dweller, that will probably stop your opponent's plays because Shaddoll decks need the graveyard. They really need the graveyard because there are a lot of effects which activates in the graveyard. For example, all the Shaddoll effects. So if you can somehow make the monsters in the graveyard unusable, then you will probably win. Another way to use this is DD Crow, for example, which is not the best card against the Shaddoll deck, but if you can use it at the right time, you can stop their combos. Another option for this can be any card which banishes the cards which were sent to the graveyard. So using those cards, your opponent won't be able to even play. Tip number 3. Don't let them use the spells. So any card which can negate spells or which doesn't let the opponent use spells, for example, the Imperial Order or the Anti-Spell Fragrance, they can be good choices against a Shaddoll player because in their deck, actually I think half of their decks are spell cards. So with these you will shut down their plays, absolutely. So they are also good choices against an Invoked Shaddoll player. All in all, I think in a Shaddoll deck, the biggest problem for most of the players is the Winda. So first you have to try to get rid of the Winda somehow, for example negating its effect, or for example you can use a Kaiju to tribute the Winda and your opponent cannot do anything against that. And after that you can make your own plays and destroy the remaining of their boards. This was all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. This video was in connection with my Invoked Shaddoll deck profile, which you can see if you click on the link in the description below. If you liked the video, don't forget to smash that like and please subscribe to my channel for more content. See you in my next video. Thanks for watching and get your game on.